Imagine a future where we're all eating insects. In the fight against food waste, it might be closer than you think. These black fly larvae might not look that appetizing, but they yield a high-quality protein. They're being farmed in a small facility under the rail arches by London Bridge.
Oh, the smell. Oof.
First, black soldier flies are encouraged to mate in an artificial and controlled environment. Their eggs are then extracted, and the baby larvae are fed food waste from local businesses.
So we collect food waste such as coffee and beer waste, we process it, and then we put it into feeding units where we add baby larvae. We wait for a 12-day cycle, and they've left behind a fertilizer. So we now then can separate the larvae from the fertilizer, and then use the fertilizer to grow new crops, and obviously use the larvae to dry and turn into the products. Nothing goes to waste.
The main product for now is fish food, but the insect protein powder could eventually be sold for human consumption. Founder Kieran believes he's producing the most efficient and environmentally friendly protein source on the planet. That's important because the UN says around a third of all food produced globally every year is wasted. That's 1.3 billion tons, or $1 trillion US, and that means wasted water, wasted land, wasted energy, wasted money, and greater greenhouse gas emissions.
Perfect business would be to go into the gym industry and to people who want high protein, low fat diets, because it is incredibly high quality protein. You know, kind of your vegetable-based proteins have an amino acid profile around here, while your meat-based proteins. But of course, all other meat-based proteins have that environmental degradation.
The question really is, why wouldn't you eat insects?
There isn't a why not. And would you eat an insect?
Go on then, let's give it a go. Here we go. Yeah, it's not bad. Quite nutty, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
With some added salt and chili, I'd even go as far as saying the black fly larvae could taste pretty good with a cold beer. Household waste is a big part of the problem too. UK households on average waste the equivalent of 7 meals a week. Tessa Clark was so stunned at the scale of the problem that she founded Olio, a mobile app that lets consumers with unwanted food connect with neighbours living nearby, who might take it off their hands.
Food waste as an issue has not yet had its moment, but it is growing rapidly in terms of the level of public consciousness around the scale of this problem. But I very much hope that food waste is going to be considered in the same way as plastic waste now is. It is completely unacceptable. It's going to take someone who is really sort of a mainstream leader to step forward and to highlight to the world the scale of this problem and the immediacy with which we need to solve it.
Tech startups are doing their bit, but there are low-tech ways to reduce food waste too. One of the most simple solutions is raising awareness. Most of us don't realise just how much we're throwing away, or how much it's costing.
It's costing us, on average, in the UK, about £60 a month. That's for a family of 4, that's over £700 a year. The most important thing is we understand that we waste food in the first place, understand how much we're actually wasting. This is particularly true in businesses, and then taking simple steps to actually reduce it. Make a list before you go shopping if you're in the home. For business, the critical thing is to operationalise food waste measurement.
The UN's Sustainable Development Goals aim to halve global food waste at the retail and consumer level by 2030. Tech startups can play their part, and maybe one day insects will be on the menu. But understanding how much we waste in the first place is at least a first step to hatching a solution.
In Yellow Springs, Ohio, a small community with an eccentric spirit, one engineer is tinkering with what could be the next big thing in agriculture.
We've got probably 20 million animals sitting behind me. So the goal here is we have to actually grow bugs in a safe and responsible manner to get a safe product into our food chain.
Glenn Courtwright is breeding black soldier flies with the intent of using his army of insects to recover food waste and help feed a growing population. But this new bug protein won't be feeding people, at least not directly. Instead, bugs can be used to grow more of the food that people are already eating. At a busy seafood restaurant in Grand River, Ohio, diners feast on oversized platefuls of perch, salmon, and shellfish. And they're not alone. Fueled by a demand for healthy, nutrient-rich proteins, our appetite for seafood has been growing steadily over the past 5 decades.
Well, seafood in the United States is the second largest deficit, second only to oil. It's healthy, and it will continue to grow in people's diets.
To meet demand, farmers like Tom Mockamer have embraced agriculture's fastest growing field, aquaculture, the raising of fish in captivity.
I raise bass, perch, bluegill, tilapia, and any other species that the people want. One of the biggest expenses in raising fish would be the fish food, and fish meal is obviously a big component of that.
Off the coast of South America, smaller fish like anchovies and sardines are harvested and ground up into what's known as fish meal, then paired with filler proteins and fat from corn and soy before being formed into pellets. The fish meal, which makes the food palatable to bigger carnivorous fish, is key.
You just can't take a soybean and throw it in a tank and think that that fish is going to eat that soybean. He's not going to do it.
Fish meal tastes good for the fish, and so in order to get them to eat food originally, they have to like it and they have to like the taste of it.
But fish meal comes at a cost.
We're harvesting more from the ocean, so the cost of fish meal has increased drastically in the last 3 or 4 years.
We're harvesting faster than we can grow them, and so anytime that happens, there's an environmental impact.
But it turns out that fish also like the taste of insects. And back in Yellow Springs, Glenn thinks his soldier fly-based insect meal could be a viable replacement for fish meal.
Insects are one of the most efficient converters of raw materials on the planet. They take care of most of the waste around us, and they'll eat just about anything. We've taken brewers' grains. We work with a number of microbreweries, including the one right across the parking lot from us, the Yellow Springs Brewery. By feeding this material to the larvae make it into a consistent source of fats and proteins.
These consistent fats and proteins make the insect meal nutritionally equal to fish meal. The larvae are dried, combined with other ingredients like soybean and cornmeal, and formed into pellets.
What we have here is we have our insect meal. This is what was the final product from our processing stage. This material here is about 65% protein and about 10% fat. This is what we use to replace the fish meal that normally comes from our oceans. So that's processed into a little pellet that looks like this.
Fish are like other animals. You know, there's probably more bugs eaten out there by other forms of livestock and animals than we're ever aware of, but it is a viable source of food for many different species of animals.
Glenn says his research proves that fish like the taste of his insect meal, and he hopes to make it commercially available soon. But his product is still undergoing independent testing. And while his sole aim is to manufacture feed for fish and other livestock, one prevailing view is that to be truly sustainable, humans should be the ones eating bugs.
And the other parts of the world don't have any problems consuming insects. Now, in the Western world, we're looking at this solely for a feed augmentation for our agriculture and very efficient use of space and a very efficient use of resources. We've got a population that is 7 billion, heading for 9 billion. Our oceans are being overfished, and we have very wasteful food practices. So what we do here, we have the technology that can solve two problems. We can solve a food problem, and we can solve a waste problem.